Call the regular meeting of the South Burlington School Board to order on Wednesday, March 19th, 2025 at 6:01 p.m. Agenda item 2, announcements and amendments to the agenda. Are there any announcements or amendments to the agenda?
I have one. I think we probably can do away with the executive session tonight, right? So we can mark that off. So I don't think we'll need that tonight.
I wanted to make clear that under item 5D, in addition to board training, retreat is just included in that, just to draw the board's attention to that.
I'm going to ask board members tonight that when we're discussing things, you raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and I'll call on you and facilitate discussion that way. Just while we gel into a larger group, I think that will help with meeting efficiency. Okay, any other announcements or amendments? Right, that brings us to agenda item 3, comments from the public. This is the community's opportunity to share feedback and concerns with the board. We ask that you keep your comments concise, 2 to 3 minutes, and that you refrain from using any information that would identify a specific person. Please raise your hand in the room or use the Zoom raise hand feature. We will only use the online chat to manage any tech issues. We are not able to take action on any issues brought to us during public comment. However, any board member may suggest tonight that the issue or question be added to a future agenda for discussion. We may also delegate addressing issues to our superintendent, Beth Nichols. And it is always helpful if you can email us a copy of your comments for follow-up. So with that, do we have any public comment in the room? Please.
Please share here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget.
That was very welcome. Is this on already?
Yes, is the button
Green light's
illuminated in green? All right, good.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, 2 things. One, let everybody know or remind everybody that April 7th, there's going to be a public session for the master plan for parks and open space. And hopefully you can get the word out to the school community that this will not be the last public session, but it is an important first session. And there's a lot of work that's going into that master plan. So hopefully there'll be a lot of participation from families within South Burlington. And secondly, I'm looking forward to serving with Violet on the new police chief selection committee. So thanks for stepping up for that. And I'll be representing the city council on that selection group. Thanks.
Elizabeth, can I trouble you to remind me of the time for the April 7th public session?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's 5:30.
I can look it up
it's
too.
on the
I'll verify
website.
it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room? I see with a hand online. Could we unmute Aaron Sutherland, please? Aaron.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi.
Hi, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. I couldn't get there today. I'm heading right now out to the really awesome meeting that's going to be at the high school at 6:30 about drug and alcohol use with students. So I'm trying to get my kids dinner, but I did want to just say and push, Mark couldn't be there tonight, and we're all kind of spread thin in terms of this entire thing about Honors American. But as a parent in the community and talking with people, it's just been extremely disappointing how that information about tomorrow night's meeting has gotten out to everybody. It's to the point where people are really feeling a lot of angst. And so we've emailed questions, we've met with Mark and Lewis, like we really have tried, and we're really trying to understand this. And just to see, it was so embedded in John Craig's email, and it almost didn't even seem like anything. It just comes as just like very untransparent. And I know like that's something you guys are all really trying to work towards, but you know, the fact that we are trying to implement something without a lot of research, the research that we've been shared with is from 2016. That's basically not even available to like use as research for myself right now. So please put out something to remind people that we can go and have a conversation tomorrow night about Honors American being changed for next year.
As a follow-up, Front Porch Forum was posted yesterday. There is a Honors American Studies information session being held at the high school in cafeteria 2 at 7 p.m. So with that, we'll call.
I just want to make a quick note on that. Initially it was scheduled, as I understand, for the auditorium, and it's been moved to CAF 2. So we corrected that in the district's front porch forum too. So, but for anyone listening, CAF 2, and we'll get some signs up at the high school as well.
Any other public comments? I do just want to note for the Zoom, it looks like some new board members are using links from other board members, so,
Yeah.
if you
Laura
can.
Williams
please
is here
donate.
twice, sorry.
And we also promote Jennifer Lawrence to panelists, please. Thank you. So moving on, that we'll go to agenda item 4, focus on student learning. Up first, we have a student spotlight with the Orchard School Student Leadership Council.
So this is one of my very favorite ways that we showcase student learning. And this evening we have a wonderful team. Welcome, my friends, come on in. So great to see you. Welcome. So you all told me you wanted to stand, which is good because I don't think we have enough chairs in the house. It's always a good problem. So come on up, make yourselves comfortable. We're so happy to see you. So this is the Orchard Student Leadership Council, and this is the subgroup, which is the Humane Society team. And they did a really fun thing recently, some of you might have seen, is that they got to pie Principal Kane in the face. All Cool Whip, and a little bit got up her nose, but she's lived to tell a lot. She's lived to tell the tale. So I'm gonna welcome Principal Kane to the floor and just talk loudly, my friend.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Use your voice. Okay, thank you, everybody. So this is a subgroup of our Student Leadership Council. This is the Humane Society group, and they're going to explain to you how they thought of this idea as a fundraiser, how they organized it, advocated, and worked really hard in school during their lunch and recess times. They had working lunches during their council times to make this happen. They also want a quick shout out to, I think they're all right here, our social emotional learning coach, Abby Hill, and our Student 5 counselor, Nina Vulich. They're facilitators of Student Leadership Council, and they really let the students do the work. It's the most wonderful, one of the most wonderful things in our school, and they do amazing work to help our students continue it. So I'm gonna hand it off to them. I've got the clicker, so if it's your turn, I will click to you, but you wanna come close and speak. Okay, so who's ever first?
About SLC. SLC, Student Leadership Council, is a group we all have at Orchard for 5th grade students, and this is all about helping and giving back to our community. This year at SLC, we have many groups who are working hard and have been making great progress and achievements with their projects. Some examples are bake sales, raffles, fundraisers, etc.
Why we chose the Humane Society. We chose the Humane Society because we care about the animals. Animals deserve the care they need, and if we donate, then maybe they will get more care and than they have now. We think that if we were to donate some money, then all the animals will get the care they need. We all love animals so much. We chose the Humane Society because we love animals, dog, cat, bunny, etc. We love every single one. We hope this money helps the animals to a fun toy or a sweet treat, and maybe this inspires you to raise some money for a good cause. You can also adopt any of these animals from the Humane Society of Chittenden County.
Our Pie in the Face contest. We were interested in a fun activity that our whole school could be a part of and that could raise money for the Humane Society.
We decided to do a Pie in the Face contest because it's a fun way to raise money and everyone can watch and have a good laugh. We asked 5 teachers to volunteer. They all had very different reactions and asked us to show them this was different, but they showed different conjunctions. People voted for the teacher they wanted to see get pie in the face this year by putting money in that teacher's jar.
The winners, we raised $270. We had 2 staff members tie for first place.
The Humane Society is coming. Tomorrow, the Humane Society is coming to our school. They will be bringing a tiny animal such as a guinea pig. They are coming so they can pick up the money that we raise. They will bring the animal, but unfortunately, we cannot touch the animal. All of the SLC groups will be able to enjoy the fun time with the animal.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us to talk about what we did for the Humane Society and about SLC. We appreciate your time and we appreciate that you listened. Thank you.
So can we go one time so you can say your names and who was a part of it? Isaac, do you want to start?
Hi, my name's Isaac.
My name's Emery. My name's Nola.
My name's Bina. My name's Claire.
My name's Kaylin.
My name is Granite.
My name's Layla.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Principal Kane, and thank you, Nita and Abby, and all of the parents. We so appreciate you all being here. I know it's not a small feat to get these ones out at this hour on a school night. What time is the guinea pig coming tomorrow? Because I think I might have to cancel a meeting. I'm gonna see what I can do here. Alrighty. You all are so inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay. No, it's no petting.
Oh.
No one can touch anything. There's no, yeah.
Because walk.
Yeah, not touch things.
All right, up next, we have our student representative report.
Perfect, thank you. This past week, Gretchen Wortley, a junior at South Burlington High School, was named the runner-up in the Poetry Out Loud for Vermont. We want to congratulate Gretchen. This was definitely a tough feat and there's lots of competition, so we're really proud of her.
And also congratulations to the sophomores for winning the SBHS Talent Night last weekend. All grades put an admirable amount of effort into their skits and they pulled off 2 amazing performances, both on Friday and Saturday. Thank you to all the community members that came out to support both the students and SBHS Key Club.
There is an SBHS band concert this Sunday, March 23rd, and a 7th and 8th grade band concert on Monday, March 24th. Both will be held in the high school auditorium and the community is welcome to attend.
And last Thursday, SBHS boys hockey team competed in the Division I finals for the 2nd consecutive year. SBH Pride was highlighted, so many students showed up to support the team. The SBHS dance team also traveled for their big New England competition as well. We're so proud of all the winter sports teams for their hard work this season.
And finally, the care closet at South Burlington High School is now open. This space is located in the library annex room and can be accessed by asking a teacher or guidance counselor to unlock the door. The care closet has winter apparel, clothing, shoes, snacks, and hygiene products, and is open to all students.
I had one more student celebration because it's about a SBHS sophomore. I just have to, and I think Seamus will get a kick out of this, and I know 2 of our audience members will as well. So, freshman, not sophomore. So, Mia Cohnfeld is a finalist in the Bernie Sanders essay contest. So she'll be representing at the 29th. I don't know if Bridget will be there. But her topic is on the rising costs of healthcare. Couldn't help, but I had to mention that. So, yeah, lots of pride for all of our K to 12 students. Thanks for letting me add that.
And if I can give a shout out, we did have 5 students go down to the New England Chorus Festival and participate. And I happened to go to that concert and it was absolutely phenomenal. There were over 210, 215 kids from across New England there. They did Mozart, they did all kinds of stuff. It was pretty phenomenal. So just, and one of my daughters was in it. I'm just extra.
For sharing that, that's amazing.
So where do you get the supplies for the Care Plaza? Where do those come from?
Yeah, so the Key Club earlier this year did a winter clothing drive and we donated a lot of it, but kept some coats that were in really good condition to store in there. And we also have sweatshirts from that. And then Key Club also gets a ton of funding from Talent Night. We get all the ticket sale money. And so we were able to use our Amazon account to buy snacks, and we got some sneakers and boots and things like that.
We can donate items too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
All right, that brings us to agenda item 5, discussion items. And at first, we have a legislative update regarding the future of public education with State Representative Bridget Burkhardt. Welcome, Bridget.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Sounds so formal, future public education, yes. But it is what we are spending a lot of time working on this session. I didn't know how you guys wanted to frame it. I can sort of run through what we're working on with regard to education and education funding, or if you had specific things you wanted to know about, I'm happy to go into that as well.
First of all, thank you for being here, especially on crossover day. I feel lucky to have you in this seat right now. And because I know you've had a busy and long day, and you must be exhausted.
It's a busy week,
Yeah.
but it is going smoothly so far.
Good.
Well, not exactly smooth. But I'm not gonna go into it.
It's going.
It's
So,
going.
I've given, I think at this point, we've shared information and I've given updates on broadly laying the, the framework for the conversation. The governor's plan, it's about, we're looking at, 5 districts and thinking about state boards and, with the costs of increasing inequality and decreasing cost. So I think those pieces have been established. The nitty gritty pieces, or anything that's, a new update, I think would just be wonderful. As we hear more about the financials, those kind of just on the floor updates, or anything you have. Bridget's on the Ways and Means Committee, which, is, an exceptional, feather in her cap, which is so well deserved, as a freshman, legislator. And, that's the committee who, is really, driving the ship as far as ed funding formulas. And so we'd love to just bend your ear on anything you can share that's kind of hot off the press, if you can.
Sure. So just to be clear, so the governor's proposal is out there. It sort of was drip fed to us over the first few weeks of the session. It took, each week we would get some new bucket of information about some piece of it. There is now a very large bill. I think it's 176 pages or something like that, that outlines his whole proposal. I think we've known since the outset that there are some issues with that proposal. I think even the administration sort of says, well, this is kind of a first offer, if you will, in the discussion. We're delighted that the administration came with something, because we've been asking, well, not we, but the legislature's been asking for something for years from the administration to say, you have a staff who works all year round and an agency, and we're just part-time legislators. Like, it'd be great if we could really have some real collaboration. So at least there is that. That being said, a lot of the things don't work. So 5 districts, I think, is broadly sort of widely known not to work, especially the way that they were laid out. And so that's just an example. So what the legislature has been working on is a very large bill that will probably be coming out in the next couple of weeks. We have a little dispensation, if you will, from crossover. Crossover is when we all have to vote out all the bills that are going to go over to the Senate, and the Senate has to do the same. Crossover for policy was actually last Friday. Crossover for money bills is this Friday, which is why my week is kind of piled up a little bit. We have a little bit of a dispensation on education because it is such a multi-pronged issue that they understood that we couldn't move that as quickly. So the policy committee, the education committee, and Ways and Means are working very closely together, as well as with some other committees. So for example, commerce and economic development, I think somewhat oddly, has jurisdiction over career technical education. There are other groups, government operations has been working on potentially maps for potential districts, those kinds of things. So we're all kind of working together. The policy side of this big bill will likely, and all this is will likely, because we're working on these bills, it's until we sort of see the whole thing together and we really discuss the whole thing together, it's hard to say what will stay in and what will get broken out into separate bills, or what might get sort of demoted to maybe next year. But for now, the policy side of this big bill will likely address scale, both in terms of class size minimums, school sizes and district sizes. Or at least start to think about district sizes. I'll get to that in a minute. The whole issue is really, at some point, we know as a state with declining enrollment, we need kids in fewer buildings and with probably less administrative overhead as a state. Not saying anything about specific districts, but just as a state. Statewide cohesion will be another sort of bucket of work in that big bill. So trying to sync up the calendar across the state, since we all have different school calendars, trying to have real graduation requirements across the state that don't have to match perfectly, but need to be a little bit more in lockstep with one another so that kids are all getting an equitable education across the state. Seeking up things like student information systems. I know we've been through several different information systems in the last decade. There are some school districts that really don't have any at all, so trying to get everyone on systems that can work together. This is all kind of building up to that idea that we probably do need fewer school districts than we have now. We're sort of laying the groundwork for getting to a point where it would be easier to combine them. Leadership and accountability is another big bucket of work that the policy committee is working on. The governor's proposal takes pretty much all rulemaking authority away from the state board and puts it all at the Agency of Education, which is a challenge for some of us who would like to perhaps see the state board be strengthened and have a different set of appointees that, had a little bit more representation of the state and different groups. Leadership and accountability is one bucket of bill or bills that will likely be part of this bigger bill. Some of the items that were left out or sort of under focused in the governor's proposal were career technical education, special education, nutrition services, and transportation. So those are all things that will hopefully be addressed somewhat. So for example, nutrition services, for right now, we're fighting really hard to keep universal school meals. And that has been a little bit, it's become more challenging with the chaos at the federal level. But I think there's broad support on both sides of the aisle for universal school meals, because it would create a little bit of administrative chaos to try to put back in a means tested program on nutrition. So it will be interesting to see where that goes, but right now it's got very broad support. On the funding side, which is where I live all day, there are really sort of four main buckets of work in that side as well. One is that the state has a very uneven property assessment system, which means that our grand list isn't very tidy. And it means that some people are being taxed fairly, some people are being taxed too little, some people are probably being taxed too much. And so there is a bill that sort of makes statewide reappraisal sort of the way we are going to move forward, I think. Getting a little pushback from listers who right now are sort of folks in, especially a lot more in rural communities or smaller communities than ours, who do a lot of both the grand list maintenance as well as the reappraisals when it's time to redo them. But I think we're finding how to work with the listers and assessors because they have a lot of experience. So that bill will likely be, like I said, this is sort of like building the foundation for how we will tax fairly and how we will make sure that we're taxing appropriately to support education. We are also going to we have a bill that will probably move ahead in the next day or two about breaking out the non-homestead property tax base into buckets. And the reason to do that is that there's been a big push to tax things like second homes, more stringently than we do small businesses, for example. Everyone also has to remember that the non-homestead side of the grand list are apartment buildings. So a lot of low and moderate income Vermonters tend to live more in apartment buildings. And if we just increase non-homestead rates without sort of breaking them apart, we end up raising their rents. And so trying to break out non-homestead so that we can tax fairly across homestead and non-homestead. The property tax credit program probably has some changes coming. So we've been talking a lot, and this one's a little hazier about where we'll land because there's a lot of modeling work going on at the Joint Fiscal Office about the governor has proposed moving away from property tax credits to a system where you would be able to exempt a portion of your property value based on your income. The challenge and the good thing about that is that it's simpler. It would definitely be a simplified administrative system. It also would reduce the lag. So right now you sort of get a property tax credit based on whatever's happening this year. You don't get to apply that credit until next year. So there's this gap. And the exemption would eliminate that gap. The challenge is the original proposal from the governor had a lot of red in terms of who was paying more in the lower and moderate income buckets. And we really didn't like that when we first saw it. So there's a lot of modeling going on to see if there's something that can be done to move to an exemption system, but make it fair and progressive, because we're really sort of proud of how progressive property taxes actually are in Vermont, as much as people complain about them. And then the big one is the foundation formula. So I do think that everyone is kind of landing on the fact that there will be a foundation formula. The challenge with the governor's foundation formula is it was based on one of the 3 types of ways that people normally make foundation formulas. One is an evidence-based model where they take sort of best practice in education and say, this is what an ideal school would look like and what an ideal district would look like in terms of size, in terms of staffing, in terms of programming. And then they cost that out and they say, this is what your foundation payment should be for a school, per pupil in a system like that. And then here are some weights for students who are English language learners, who are living in poverty or are lower income. And the governor's proposal also proposes to put more weight on small schools and schools that are in sparsely populated areas, so where there might not be another school. So his is based entirely on an evidence-based model. Best practice is to take an evidence-based model or a cost factor analysis model and combine it with professional judgment panels, which is more than just sort of a listening and learning tour. Like it's actual, real, deep discussion with education professionals and administrators to say, okay, here's what the ideal looks like. What does our current system look like? And how do we need to adjust it? That adjustment piece wasn't really done in the modeling that the governor gave to us. So right now, I think in the background, there is some cost factor analysis, which is the 3rd way of doing it, which sort of says, what does our system look like right now? If we were to just take what we have now, turn that into a foundation formula, and then set out some goals and some milestones and some parameters to improve the sustainability of our system, or to make sure that all kids are getting opportunities that our kids in South Burlington have, or the kids at CPU have. How do we move from where we are to a different sort of level in a few years, but let's start with where we are now. So I think that that's broadly where we're going to go, is sort of this cost factor analysis and some addition of professional judgment panels. This is all to say the governor sort of wants to snap us all into a foundation formula right away, within another fiscal year, which I think there's pretty broad feeling that would break our current system. And we're not starting from scratch. We're not starting from a blank page where you can just build an evidence-based model from scratch. We have a system in place that is serving kids. It's not perfect, but we definitely don't want to move too fast and break things. So the governor's whole plan, he thinks would take 3 to 5 years to implement. We're thinking more 5 to 7 years. And so it may be that we don't get to a foundation formula by the end of this session, that we say, here's the roadmap for how we're going to get there. I forgot to mention on the governance piece that we were talking about, with maps and districts and all of that. I think there's likely to have the dreaded summer study committee, but it really is going to take more work than we can do in 2 weeks as a group of people who don't really have any background in setting maps or setting district lines and that kind of stuff. There've been all kinds of discussions about different ways to do it, but because we don't have a lot of regionalization in our government in Vermont to start with, there's not really a great starting place. So everyone's just kind of throwing ideas in the bucket and arguing for their various ideas. So I think we're probably going to convene a group of folks that are all stakeholders, probably some superintendents, some other folks that are really involved in the system, and then people with backgrounds in, mapping and all of that, to give us a set of maps. So the current estimate is probably we would end up with between 10 and 20 districts. That's much more likely than 5. And so I can't really tell you exactly how this will look, because as I said, there's a lot more work to do on that. So of course, we're all trying to keep in mind that the goal is a sustainable education system that gives all kids in Vermont what they need, because there are pockets of Vermont big portions are fine, where kids aren't getting what they need. There are portions even within our own district where kids aren't getting what they need because we simply can't hire the people or we don't have the resources to provide it. And so building a system that gets all kids what they need at a cost that the taxpayers can afford. And I do want to set some expectations about that because I think there's a bit of a misconception based on a lot of the press releases that came out over, the early part of the session that we're going to save $183 million by going to a foundation formula. None of this work points in that direction. What a foundation formula would do is it would provide more predictability. It would stabilize the system so that property taxes aren't jumping up 14% in one year and 5% in the next year. That they will likely continue to grow, but at a much, much slower rate. That would be a little bit more in control of the districts and the overall administration of the system. So sorry that took up so much time. I didn't mean to take up so much of the agenda, but that's sort of the omnibus education. The other piece that's not related to this, well, it's related to it, but it is just sort of, we have a couple of years where we're going to have to continue to use the system we have until there's a foundation formula or some other future formula in place. So we are getting ready in the next couple of days to set the yield, which, as you guys know from discussions, is how we set property taxes. And so the governor has a proposal to use $77 million of one-time funding from the general fund to transfer that to the ed fund to buy down property tax rates. So he set that number originally because that was the estimate of what it would take to get the average statewide tax rate to grow, not at all, at zero. Right now, the estimate is 77 million applied would make the non-homestead or both tax rates grow by 1%, which for us in South Burlington would mean we would still be growing more than that, but much less than the 8% that we assumed when we voted. The problem with one-time money, as most of you know, is that when you use it, you're starting in that $77 million hole next year. And we don't know, especially given the chaos of what's happening at the national level. And because so much of what's in the ed fund now is based on sales and use tax. We don't know what's going to happen with the economy. We don't know if there's even going to be as much funding next year as we have this year. And it could be significantly less. And so there's a big debate right now in my committee and amongst even the broader legislature about, do we apply that full 77 million? Do we not use any of it? Because a lot of budgets passed, ours was amongst a very big group of budgets that passed. Those budgets passed based on tax rate calculations that were based on roughly the December 1st letter that came out months ago. Do we break that in two? Do we put some in a reserve fund for next year in case we need that money to buy down rates and lower property taxes a little bit this year? And then the other thing is if we put any of it, the 77 million or half of that 77 million in a reserve fund, can we keep a wall around it? Because there are so many different needs right now. I think appropriations, the last tally was, the appropriations committee is kind of our sister committee. They're the ones who spend the money. The Ways and Means Committee is supposed to set tax rates to raise money. Appropriations kind of decides how budgets are going to be spent. And they had $300 million of additional requests from various organizations and agencies and things above and beyond what was in the governor's recommended budget that he presented to us in January. So they are working around the clock to try to prioritize and figure all that out. It's really hard when there's $77 million of money sitting there. If we don't use it in education, it's really hard to say no one else can use it. So that was a very rambly download, but anybody have any questions?
Bridget.
Yeah.
Let's do more questions, please, Laura.
Thank you, Bridget. And I know you're on the House side, correct?
I am on the House Ways and Means
Yeah.
Committee. Yeah,
So-
Senate Finance is kind of our sister.
So I just wondered if you could, so we had an emergency VSBA meeting on the new Senate bill.
Yes.
So I just wondered if you, I don't know if you could, but they're now, this bill is moving, it sounds like it's moving pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And I don't know if the time and care is being taken. I'm very concerned about Chittenden County, what's gonna happen, but they're now proposing 9 large government units, 6 supervisory districts and 3 supervisory unions, and 2 existing small interstate districts. Does that sound about, have you heard of this or?
I've heard of this. So my senator, one of the senators from Chittenden County at a previous meeting that I was at CVU last week, termed it map wars. There are kind of map wars going
Yeah.
on in the Senate, and everybody has a plan and they're running around really focusing for some reason on maps when there's so many
Yes.
other things that kind of need to be focused on. I didn't even get to the fact that really what we all should be focusing on and other committees are focusing on are things like healthcare costs that are actually the real cost drivers in the education system. So yes, I understand there is a Senate bill. I have not seen the Senate bill yet because we're still in crossover. So I think we passed 8 or 9 bills out of my committee today, which just means like
Yeah,
just hyperspeed. So I don't know what's in the Senate bill. They definitely move in a different way than we move in the House. So
yeah, it seems to be moving faster, and so maybe, so you're right, so I think the number of districts is going to be constantly changing, I don't think, yeah, okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
definitely not settled. And there will have to be so much work done about the logistics of that. Someone has said multiple times in meetings that there aren't enough lawyers in Vermont to handle the transition that will have to take place. The other thing that I forgot to mention that we don't have enough of in Vermont is capacity of the Agency of Education. So there have been a lot of, great ideas passed by the legislature over the last few years. And the agency has just been so understaffed and under-resourced that they can't actually even implement those, let alone something of this scale. So the governor has $4 million in his proposed budget for the Agency of Education. They are proposing to use most of that on consultants and communication folks. And we're like, maybe not, like, that's not where the legislature would choose to use that for. I can't speak for the full legislature. That's not what Ways and Means and the ed committees would use that for. So lots more discussions to be had very rapidly, but I think, at least for the legislature, the point is to try to slow this down to a pace where it can actually be managed thoughtfully.
Bridget, it's really interesting that you mentioned capacity at the AOE. Though many of us view it at an all-time low. And as the Champlain Valley superintendents who represent about half of our state's population and one district in the original modeling, as we came together on Friday, we each regional group of superintendents through the Vermont Superintendents Association are essentially giving this professional judgment and offering it up. My hope is that it will be this this trio of the evidence-based as well as the cost factors with this professional judgment. And our group focused on some pretty finite factors. So we gave feedback to VSA. And of course, our feedback in Chittenden County is going to look really different than a lot of Vermont because we have more resources as compared to many of the rural areas in Vermont. At any rate, one of the first things that our team talked about was capacity at the Agency of Education and how if schools or districts or students, teachers are going to be successful through this process, that we need an Agency of Education who has the capacity to support us through this change. So that was a top concern that I hadn't really heard in the discussion that I've been a part of so far at any level. And we also talked about class sizes, and our team overwhelmingly thought they should be increased. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that that's better for learning, teaching. We talked about larger school sizes. We talked about larger district sizes. And when we started having these conversations in, 6 months ago, the team had different thinking overall, but it's really shifted as we've, continued the conversation. So I thought it was really interesting. But AOE capacity is such an important piece. The AOE is really going to need to roll this out and to provide technical assistance. And so I would advocate for, rather than one-time consultants, to use that money for recruiting, hiring, retaining staff, and to develop that staff to do, train the trainer and build the capacity in-house. I realize that's not your responsibility, but that's of critical importance on our side for implementation.
Yeah, and the VSA has been absolutely great. I have watched some of the testimony. And by the way, I didn't really quite understand before I was in the legislature that you can watch testimony in every committee. It's all like, you can watch hours and hours and hours of YouTube video if you want. You just go to the committee webpage within the legislative page and click on live stream, and it will pop up you can go all the way back to the beginning of the session. But I do watch a lot of the testimony in House Education, and the VSA gave very impactful testimony. is it yesterday or is it Friday? I can't remember, but anyway, in the last few days, there's been some very impactful testimony from the BSA, so we really appreciate that.
Can I ask you a technical question?
Sure.
I think you have to be called on. By the chair.
I didn't realize that was part of the, my apologies. The bill regarding the grand list,
Yes.
how do you think that's gonna impact the CLA based on what discussion has occurred so far?
Yeah, the hope is that the CLA will probably always be there. It's sort of one of those things that's really kind of hard to get away from, given how fast. So the common level appraisal, I won't go into it, because I think most of you know what it is. The hope is that that CLA will stabilize if everyone's being reappraised more often. So there are literally dozens of towns in Vermont that have not had a reappraisal in 2 decades. And so you could just imagine, like, we're kind of guessing at what actual market rate, appropriate rate is for that town. Yeah, so I think the hope is that if everyone can get on a 6-year cycle at the very minimum, like some places might be even faster than that, but to get everyone at the bare minimum on a 6-month or 6-year cycle. So that, yeah, the grand list is just cleaner. We just know what's there. I think the CLA will not see it as much volatility. I think we're in a tricky spot in Chittenden County because I think there's always going to be a lot of volatility just because people really want to be here. And I think there's a lot of pressure on our market, but yeah, hopefully it will stabilize.
Thank you.
No, good.
So class size, is that gonna be set by AOE or statute?
So I have not seen the actual legislative language yet. My understanding is that they would set class size minimums, and I don't know how they'll phrase them, whether they'll be minimums or guidelines. I don't think South Burlington should have any trouble with the class size minimums because we're already meeting them or exceeding them. The real idea behind class size minimums is, that's how you end up cutting costs out of the system, is to have, kids in classes of scale. It's also how you, as Violet alluded to, you have better opportunities for kids. My younger son was at a very small school for his kindergarten and 1st grade where he had 6 kids in his class. And that's fine if you're in kindergarten, but by the time you get to 2nd or 3rd grade, like your social circle is very tiny and it really does impact your learning in a negative way. And so really the class size minimums was a way sort of from the ground up to encourage the discussion organically at some of the districts where they have these tiny schools that have, 25 or 40 kids in the whole school, like to think about, maybe it would be better for our kids if we merged with some other school close by. There will always be small schools in Vermont because some of them geographically, you just can't close a school, even if it's only got a few kids in it, because there just isn't one close enough by. But there are many that are close enough and the communities just haven't been able to kind of come to an agreement about how to do that.
Can I add info to that to answer James's question? So I did give our class size policy to VSA. And it is definitely regarded as more ideal because we, with our population, have the ability to have larger class sizes. And I think these two were probably a part of a lot of this development, but we have a minimum and an optimal ranges for these. It's policy G6 if you want to take a peek. But the maximum average not to be exceeded that we have right now is set forth in the ed quality standards, which is currently regulated by the state anyway. So just to make just so you had that info. Yeah, there's been a lot of interest around our class size policy, which we changed a year ago, so March 6th, and we intentionally increased each band by a student or 2, knowing that we wanted to retain ed quality, preparing for the FY25 budget cycle. So that's, well, it would have been in preparation for FY26. So just wanted to provide that information.
Thanks, Bridget, for being here. I have one short comment and then one brief question I'm hoping you can answer. You may not be able to answer the question, but so it was interesting because I did watch the testimony yesterday, or was it yesterday or this morning from the BSA. And it was extremely interesting because a lot of the testimony I've heard so far is from supervisory unions and districts that have a lot of small schools. And I feel listening to it sort of out of place in South Burlington. I was working at the school here in the nineties when Act 60 passed. And I remember one of the teachers commenting that Act 60 was designed to take the mountaintops down to fill in the valleys. And I will say that to some extent, I have a little bit of concern that there is this perspective that South Burlington and Chittenden County has what it's need. There's a lot of testimony around filling in what the other regions, and I'm not denigrating at all, they have significant needs. And I'm not going to dispute that at all. My concern is that from where we sit, there's going to potentially be this perspective that, well, don't worry about them because they've got the population and it'll work itself out. So I just want to make that comment, and I do respect the testimony that I heard. It was very compelling from these superintendents who have these districts that are small schools, and one basically said he struggles. Do I try to hit, do I divide up into two, or do I try to hit the minimum? And it was really a very interesting testimony from him. My one question I did have was, I recall, was there a bill introduced to move to income-based taxation, and has it moved forward at all?
So this has been an idea that's been floated session after session after session for probably at least the last decade. I know that, I think when we were on school board, I think we talked to Martin about like income-based education funding. The Public Assets Institute, which is a very well-respected kind of advocacy and think tank, has proposed this several times. So we've had lots of proposals. There are two legislators that did get together to actually put it into a bill, and came and testified about it. The chair of my committee, Emily Kornheiser, had a summer study committee, I guess it was like 2 summers ago or 3 summers ago. And she really thought she was going into that study committee with the purpose of we're moving to income-based education funding. And she really thought that was going to be the way to go. And after a summer of work on it, she's highly convinced it is not the way to go. I can't give all of her reasons. One of the struggles is that income tax is, so corporate tax is the most volatile kind of tax. Income tax is sort of next, and then sales and use, and then property tax is the most stable. And so, well, we don't love property tax, it's the most hated tax in America, as everyone keeps reminding me. It is much more stable, and it's just a little bit easier to know what you're working with for the next year versus income tax. And yeah, I can't go into all the reasons. It has not moved forward.
Okay.
We had testimony on it. It is what they call on the wall. So we have this wall of all the bills that have been introduced in our committee. It is not one that's going to move forward, not least because the governor hates the idea and we do not have a supermajority anymore. So even if we wanted to move income-based ed funding forward, there's no way we could get it through right now.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
It's not a question, it's a request, so to
Sure.
speak. The governor was on the radio this morning and he stated that, that number 5 wasn't set in stone, that it was a starting point, which was great. And I believe the original plan was or hoped was to get this thing implemented within the next 3 years. You stated maybe 3 to 5, but you're looking at 5 to 7. And the only thing I would request is, and no disrespect, government is not as efficient as the private sector, and they have a habit of dragging things out. And that is not going to be good for the taxpayers for this thing to be dragged out. Everybody knows it's a problem. It needs to be fixed. And it needs to be fixed as quickly as possible, getting the best results. We'll put the best plan in place, but please don't drag it out to 7 years.
Yeah, and I would say that no one is dragging it out. Everyone is trying to be cautious with our kids, because if we get it wrong, there's a very big impact on our kids and on our taxpayers. If we get it wrong, there could also be a very big impact on our taxpayers. So no one is purposely dragging it out. We are trying to just do the work that needs to be done, because what we found with the governor's proposal is that it was very big. And as soon as we started to dig into any of the details underneath, there were none. Like, the work had not been done. So basically what happened is the Commission on the Future of Public Education was set up over the summer, to start over the summer, and it was meant to give its final recommendations in December of 2026. So we were supposed to get kind of a preview of their recommendations this past December, which we did. And then their final work was supposed to be done after a whole year of public outreach and, sort of input from stakeholders all around the state. The administration was part of this commission, and they kind of did an end run around the commission. I mean, they kind of took a little bit of the work that was done and put together this big, bold, loud plan. And then there are sprint teams operating in the background right now to try to fill in all the details about how those things would actually work. So every time you push on it a little bit, you kind of get, well, that exact detail has not been worked out yet. And some of these details are really critical. So, for example, figuring out how towns are actually legally going to merge districts, or not towns, but how districts are going to merge, it takes some work, and that work just hasn't been done. And so we can do that work as fast as we can. We are, as I said, a citizen legislature that's only there for a few months a year. We don't have staff. So we are doing our very best to move as quickly as we can without making giant mistakes, because we have made mistakes in the past. So we have a whole list of unfunded mandates that sort of torture all of you when you have to do budgets. And part of those are people with a really good idea, moving really fast and getting it into statute and asking districts to figure it out, and then never really coming up with funding or some way of making those things sustainable. And yeah, I could name a list of things that have been challenging, because we probably moved pretty quickly on them. One of the things, for example, and this goes back to the AOE capacity, is Act 173 that was implemented a few years back. The idea was better services for kids, really helping kids more, at the same time bending the cost curve on special education and bringing down those extraordinary special education costs. And that has never been fully implemented, partly because the AOE was so underfunded and under-resourced that there just was no one to help implement Act 173. That being said, I could come back, we could have a whole nother session on Act 173, because I feel like we are one of the communities that has invested very deeply in Act 173. And even with all of that investment and all of that expenditure, we still have families saying the kids aren't getting what they need. And we had to put out a letter in the fall that said, we can't even hire enough people to meet the IEPs that we have. Because the whole idea was, like, if you intervene kids earlier in their education and in the regular classroom, maybe not as many of them need IEPs, like maybe more of them can sort of operate with less resource later on. It wasn't just about resources, but it was about sort of earlier intervention. And it hasn't been fully implemented. And even in the places where it has been implemented, it has not really bent the cost curve, and it has not necessarily produced perfect results, let's just say, for kids. And so that is an example of something that was really pushed really hard and really quickly, and districts just spent a ton of time on it if they had the resource to, and it has not really done what we hoped it would do. And so that's why I think people are right to be cautious, and we are working very hard to work as quickly as we can with a good outcome. So I would just say, I just want to manage people's expectations, because I think the governor's plan was highly unrealistic in terms of 3 years to, fairly full implementation with a couple more years to clean up around the edges. I really, no one's dragging it out, but I do think we need to take time to do it correctly.
I can add to the timeline piece to that. So part of what I think the phasing in is important, that it won't start at 3 years. Some of the things we talked about with CVSA and VSA is that the 3 to 5 years might look like things even next year, like a statewide calendar, or looking at common school information systems, or here's the big one, school financial systems. So unless we're all on the same financial systems, they're not going to have a good grip of the money. So phasing those things in have to happen for them to get to the later stages. CVSA is anticipating that those 3 things will happen sooner based on what we hear. And while it might look like a statewide calendar isn't part of this brand, project or information systems or financial software, those are really foundational pieces. So, and again, my understanding is that the statewide calendar could happen soon.
On that last, on 173, seems like there might be bipartisan interest in the cost savings that could come from relaxing maybe part of 173. Is that
I haven't really heard, I keep asking question meetings and I keep getting a little defensiveness from the folks in the room who were there for 173. So the chair of the ed committee was one of the people who wrote and sort of implemented 173, and I step on his toes like every time we have a joint session. He's a lovely man and he's working really hard and he has the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was on the commission all summer, so he never really got a break. I have not heard anyone say that Act 173 should be changed or go away. There's sort of this broad discussion of what are we going to do about special education, because the costs continue to increase and increase, and yet outcomes for students still aren't great. They're better than they probably would have been without Act 173, but we're paying an awful lot for not the results that we were hoping for. So I don't get the sense that that's a high priority right now, just given all the other workload, because as I said, they're working on multiple bills in ed. And we're working on multiple bills in Ways and Means, and we have only so much session left. And then we'll see what the Senate sends over and see if there are good ideas in that as well that can be.
Yeah, Ally,
I just want to say we have about 35 minutes left for this entire agenda item, so let's start to wrap up this part of the discussion.
thanks. Ally and I have been working alongside some other student representatives on the CBSD board and the Harwood Union board. And we're really interested in increasing student voice and perspective in the policy drafting process. So I'm actually going to the State House on Friday to testify in front of the House Ed Committee with those other board reps. And I guess my question is just, how do you see students being helpful in this process, and what kind of perspective or like feedback do you think legislators would like to hear from students? What could be helpful to you?
So I always struggled. I testified a few times before I became a legislator. So when I was on the school board, I testified about master plan visioning, so about our building projects and a few other various education things. And I think the best advice is to just bring your own full self and just know that that's enough. Like, you don't have to like have like a grand, plan for trying to impact some specific thing that we're working on. They just want to hear your perspective. So I think one perspective that would be helpful is what it's been like to be in high school over the last couple of years with the budget cuts, because, both CVU and I don't know Harwood as well in terms of like how their budget has worked, but I know CVU and us have really struggled with programs being cut or changed. And it's helpful to hear how that impacts students and what your priorities are, what is helpful to you. So we talk a lot, for example, about, we were just debating it today, the importance of the early college program. So I did not realize it was this big a number. Supposedly 6% of seniors in Vermont disenroll from public schools and they go to early college. And because it's so few per district, it ends up meaning that the districts can't really lower capacity. So you don't lose a teacher because you only lost a couple of students per district, but then we're also paying for that early college through the system. And so things like, are kids excited about early college and dual enrollment and all these things that the grownups in the room talk about, but it's helpful to hear like what that means to students. And it may, people may be focused on other things. We do hear a lot from students that have been in the State House previously about career technical education and like what an impact that has made on their career path and their life path. So yeah, just hearing what's important to you is really helpful because you bring a completely different perspective than the folks who are working in education or your parents or all of us who spend all of our days thinking about it.
Awesome, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I would love to come watch you testify. Unfortunately, Friday, I think, it's my crossover day for all the money bills, other than like the big bill, like the budget and stuff. All of them have to be out by the end of the day Friday. So I have a feeling I can't make any promises. I was supposed to go watch Gretchen at Poetry Out Loud on Friday and that's gonna take it. So it's,
thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I put a plug for, so I reached out to Megan, she's the chair of the subgroup for the Commission of the Future of Public Education. And well, I guess she's the chair of the whole team, but thinking subgroup, like it's connected to this plan. So anyway, Megan Roy is the chair of that commission, and we are hosting a session from 1 to 4 p.m. on April 7th in this room. Would love for folks to attend. Board members, we'll do our usual scheduling thing, but Bridget, would be great to have you there, student reps. Lovely to have you there along with any other students. I reached out to Adam Bunting, the CBSD soup, and we're trying to coordinate to get our two
Great.
teams together with the administrators and the student reps. So
Did you see those suggested dates?
I just pulled those up. I didn't see them because it hadn't gotten forwarded. So I was emailing you, what time are you testifying? So we'll connect offline on that,
Okay,
because I want to be there to support, so.
Yeah, and let me know when you are there. I can try to see what I can make, but I would love to, anytime there's a South Burlington person. Yes, yes, especially a student, I would love to see you.
Thanks, Bridget.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me so much time. Yeah. Thanks for all the work you're doing. It's not easy.
All right, and next we have a staffing and the voter information FY 26 budget. We added this item to discussion after hearing public comment last week. And I think it's important for the board to offer some clear perspective on that. Seamus, do you have something prepared to read?
Yes. Here. So I think that the superintendent and her staff are experts in Vermont education quality standards. And we on the board are not experts, and we're not supposed to be. Some of us are professional educators, not me. But we're representatives of the residents of South Burlington, and according to statute, we're responsible for example, taking, quote, any action that is required for the sound administration of the school district. And we're also responsible for presenting budgets. So, with regard to us being directly asked about staffing and budgeting changes, I just have two thoughts. First, if we intervened in staffing decisions, I think we would be breaking the part of the statute that talks about sound administration, because again, we're not professional educators. We're not experts in the education quality standards. And there may be other considerations. And second of all, if we suggested or forced the superintendent to change the budget after the vote, then that would also go back on our duty to build consent of the voters.
The only thing I would say is, and I agree, which is heart wrenching because it was very difficult to hear the commentary last week and the students who are so directly impacted. And I think that there's been some good discussion and dialogue and there's been some communication, but I almost wonder if it's worth taking some of the feedback like this one, and thinking of a way that we can get that out to the community in a better way than just, because there was such an outpouring of support. And I don't know that they're going to have the closure that maybe they need on it and the understanding of why the decisions were made, right? And I think that, going back to Seamus's point, which you keep bringing up, and I have to say, I 100% agree with you. Get it at a specific reading level that people can understand, that it's digestible, that people can take it and go, okay, I get this. And send something out, whether it's through front page forum, whether it's through the other paper. I know we've had some discussions about social media. I mean, you've got to have multiple channels because not everybody's going to go to our website, right? But I think there has to be something to communicate that back to say, we heard you. And here's the reason that we're responding in this way. That would be my only feedback.
That was my primary concern too, is supporting our students and our staff. The next day I had a meeting with the full South Burlington High School administrative team and the central office team. And it was, please work with the guidance counselors, the team, the director of school guidance, and make sure that students are worked with individually and that there's broader communication about that, you know, with the message, they will be supported. And here is our plan to support you. And what do you need right now? So that was, you know, step one. Behind the scenes, something that's been going on since the budget passed. Administrators and I were talking, you know, as we developed the budget about how we're going to support the changes with these nearly 15 FTE reductions for fiscal year 26. So planning to support students and staff and make changes has been underway. So I said to the high school team, bring in that guidance department closer and really work with them on what do they need, and kind of kick that to the top of the list of what supports are in place. Our school counseling department does have talking about numbers, I'm a numbers person too. So we allocate $55,000 annually for our school counseling department to come and do summer work and come for the year. So, you know, there's both time, space, and resources dedicated to that future planning. So those are really, you know, from an operational lens, those are some steps that are underway that I wanted to share with you that are on the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess just to kind of follow up on that, I think the thing is, and that's all great, and I think it's going back and having that communication with the community, like, hey, this is what we've seen, you know, here's some, you know, highlights from the first month of the new board together, and this is how we're responding and actioning these. But I think having that loop back, that communication loop back is really important. We hear you, this is what we heard. And this is the response and why we are actioning it in this way, right? And again, I think multiple communication avenues is also really important because people are going to get their news from a lot of different sources. So it's great for the students. And it's also, how do you take that back and share that with the broader community? Like, oh yeah, wow, board, you're actually, you know, this is some of the work that's going on behind the scenes, right?
Can I add that if folks do see changes, I will bring them to the board. For instance, you've seen superintendents add contingency teachers. So if we get huge spikes in enrollment, which usually happens at the elementary level, then we may add a classroom teacher, right? So those are times we're required to meet the needs of students who have IEPs that require staffing. Sometimes that looks like an interventionist. So I just wanted to make sure that information is known, that there are certain situations where we're attending to ed quality standards and we have to meet standards which requires staffing changes. Those would be, the board would be, those would be made known to the board, and I'm still accountable for both FTEs and dollar amount.
I don't know what Jennifer said. I liked what you were talking about in a way to try to loop back with the people who took the time and were brave enough to come up and talk about something. And I think it's important to explain why, and then also to say, we understand you're still disappointed. Like, even though there's a reason, it's still disappointing that what you were hoping for isn't possible. So I think that looping back and also just being like, just because there's an answer doesn't mean that a 15-year-old kid is going to be like, oh, okay, I get it. Because I wouldn't.
Exactly.
Sometimes I don't, even as a 45-year-old. So that's another piece to like getting to the community that we didn't know, that heard them, and that we understand that they're going to be disappointed with the answer. But
I think that's an important message to deliver too. I think the community needs to hear that as well. Right? There's going to be things that are going to be tough. And these are some of the tough decisions that we have to make when we're in a constrained environment. And that's just the reality of the circumstances that we're faced with, right? But
up next, we have board members and employment status for the district. Tim, did you have a little?
Yeah, I guess I can speak to this one. This will be pretty brief. So, you know, Violet, I don't know what kind of follow-up we want here. I mean, according to statute, school board directors are elected officials of the municipality of the district. So not only that, but I did actually look at our conflict of interest statement and conflict of interest statement policy. And bullet point number 7, should a board member apply for employment, he or she must first resign from the board. So it may be just up to whatever the financial issue is, but technically, legally, I don't think we're employees of the school.
Can we discussed the stipend in this thing? So I understand last year, the stipend was suspended, for lack of a better way of putting it. It was a symbolic gesture to try and get the budget passed. Although I really don't think that $3,700 in a $68 million budget swayed anybody. But I understand the symbolic gesture. Now it would be 5,200 or just above that in the $71 million budget, so it's not that large of a line item. But given the time that the board puts in, modest transportation costs and looking around and seeing that, we are probably have received the lowest stipend out of the surrounding school districts. Not asking that we be raised with them, but I just think it's fair that given what the time and effort that the stipend be reinstated.
So the stipend it's not gone, we forewent it, as a team at the time, we I guess had consensus that we were not gonna accept our stipend for the year, and we had just heard testimony from Principal Burke that some of the co-curriculars that were being cut, I believe it was like $650 would bring it back, and so it felt like there's 5 of us at the table, we could bring back 5 of those co-curriculars. So that's just some of the context. I believe that at this time, if any board member would like to take their stipend, they just need to email me with Violet on copy, and we have the funding available for that. So it's not, it wasn't specifically budgeted for FY26, but it is, as you said, such a small amount, it can be taken like a contingency line item.
I mean, because what I was gonna suggest is like we could have a vote, and if anybody doesn't want to take it, they can contact the school board or the district and say, you don't have to pay that person's stipend.
I don't think we need a formal vote. I'm just email me with Violet on copy. And anyone who doesn't want to take their stipend, same goes, just email and. James?
Yeah, I think it's part of a broader issue that I think we should invest in our own effectiveness. And I think that like some of the ideas around paying for training, that the weekend thing and the accelerator, and I think that we should just take seriously whatever small investments can make us more effective. And if that means, if the stipend means somebody on fixed income can be at a meeting instead of driving somebody to the airport because they couldn't afford a taxi or could afford a babysitter that otherwise they'd have to stay home or leave early. I think it's just like, it's a small dollar that goes a long way towards making us more effective. And like Dan says, it's also a small dollar compared to, and the training is also in there. It's small dollars compared to everything else. It could really help with policy governance.
The professional development funds for the board are separate from like stipends, so it's not, while it may seem like the same pot of money, they're budgeted differently. At this time, any board member is welcome to email and request that they would like to accept or not to accept their stipend. That's in the amount of $750, and I'm not exactly clear on this, but it seems like taxes are withheld, even if you fill out a W-2. That's not my understanding of how stipends work, but I think I just want you to have the expectation it will likely be less than $750 after taxes.
That's expected.
I think we had to fill out the W-2.
Yeah.
Did you fill out that paperwork?
Well, that's what when I started,
Yeah.
I questioned, it's like, why am I doing this? Because I didn't think I was an employee, and then I was told I was an employee. Being told I'm not an employee, and so I was wondering, why am I filling out all these employee forms? So, and that's when I found out the stipend had been suspended or however you want to refer to it.
So because stipends are not tax exempt, therefore you have to fill out the W-2 so that you can get taxed on it. Yeah, so that's why, and when I've talked about that, you know, employee of the district, it's because of the W-2. It's just that, so.
And I'm assuming if anybody wants to accept the stipend, they would probably also have to fill out the direct deposit forms.
Then we'll check the one tonight.
Okay.
We've really been reducing paper the last couple of years. I don't know if you noticed. We are not cutting paper checks, as a practice anymore. Email Chelsea and me and we'll work this out for you.
Considering we've gone pretty much over time on quite a bit of this, and I really appreciate Bridget being here because her time is pretty valuable. I'd like to move that we take the student representative recruitment process and public comment topics and postpone them to next week.
I think I can keep student recruitment process.
Pretty short.
Yeah.
So, I wanna, just so we can get over with the public comment. Cause it's been on the agenda.
Right, but my motion is right now, so if nobody wants to second it, I guess you don't have to, you can die. But, so I put a motion on, right, to table, so.
So Tim moves to move public comment to our next meeting. Is there a second?
I moved to student representative recruitment process and public comment. To postpone that until the next meeting. So that's the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I think the public comment is a fairly simple change that I think would help make the public more understanding of how we want them to give us feedback. And so it would be nice if it disappeared from the agenda in the sense of like,
Can I make an amendment to that if the discussion exceeds 5 minutes, that we move to postpone it? We still have till 7:30, so maybe we can give us a try.
Procedurally, you have to see this vote out and then put a motion on the table.
She could, it says.
Oh, you're amending the motion, I'm sorry. All right.
So I second that.
Any discussion? All in favor,
Aye.
saying aye.
Can I ask a question real quick? So there's nobody here to, sorry, if you're gonna provide public comment, is there anybody online? I'm not able to
No.
see. Okay.
It's a discussion item for how we conduct public comment, not that it is. time for
Okay,
public comment,
okay.
but that's totally-
Okay,
Okay.
okay. All right, because I was thinking that's a funny spot for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great. I think we're ready to move on to school board trainings. Is that
No,
it?
we still have a motion on the floor. That's been amended, so now we're only talking about. For your motion,
My amendment, is
so
that
you
it
had the
is 5
subsidiary
minutes.
motion, which we approved. Which was to, if the student representative one goes over 5 minutes, we move it, right? So my motion still stands. That would mean public comment would get moved to next week. Right?
I thought I was amending for both topics, but. Is that interpretation?
I'm just trying to be very clear, because
Um. I'm not clear, I understand the amendment, so we're literally gonna spend. five
I know.
minutes on this.
I apologize,
For the orders of the day, if we can just like maybe just get through,
Laura,
yeah,
we're just trying to decide
I
what
know,
we're gonna
this
come
is-
and talking about.
okay.
This is the storming, right? We're learning. So I was suggesting, I think I can cover student representative recruitment process in less than 5 minutes. And if after 5 minutes of public comment discussion, we do not have consensus, then we'll put it on the next agenda is what I was suggesting. In my
Okay.
amendment. And if that wasn't clear and you voted for that, because that wasn't clear, please raise your hand and indicate that.
good, okay, so that's what we're gonna vote on now is the main motion. Because that's what you amended it to, we approved that.
That we just voted.
Voted on the subsidiary. So my motion has not been chosen.
Okay, so all in favor of moving student representative recruitment process and public comment to our next agenda if it exceeds 5 minutes?
Yep.
Please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously.
I'll have to write my motions next time, so.
I used to do that. Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
so we have 10 minutes left to discuss board members, and, no, we're done with that. School board trainings, student representative recruitment process, and public comment. So school board trainings, if we could, please. I had some emails from what board members would like to see. Generally, I'm getting consensus that everybody would like training. It seems like most of it is around policy governance. If you would please raise your hand to indicate if I'm missing something. Yes.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't send my notes to you. I actually wrote them up today, but did not mail them. Just a couple of quick comments on that. As a retreat, I would like to ask that it not contain information that requires public meeting. That I think the retreat should be just for the board to get together and form ourselves. So obviously, any public stuff should be left out. It would just be a training meeting. Because I felt last year when we did it, we had it as an open meeting. So public meeting, and it really sort of tamped down on kind of what we did. It felt more like a board meeting than anything else. That would be my one thought. My second ask, if we're doing training, is to potentially review some of the basic Roberts rules. Just so that we're all like some of the key ones, right? You know, and maybe even practice a little bit. So I don't forget motions going forward and such. That was my suggestion. Thank you.
I do want to just clarify for the board, I think it is a little confusing. We have this listed as board trainings. And it feels like the intention is to also discuss our retreat, but those are two very different things. A training and a retreat are different things. So I also have collected a lot of feedback from the board about what you'd like to see the retreat be, which is great. I don't think we have time to discuss it right now, frankly, but Laura.
Oh, I just would like the retreat sooner, that summer, like April and May. I think that would be really important for us to get together and gel as a group. That would, even if it's a short one, like on a weekday from like 5 to 7 or something like that. I really think that is critical because we don't know each other, and that's just my.
Oh, with that, can we put the retreat on the next agenda so we can talk about that? Because I think Tim raised a good point. I have some thoughts about that. And then on the trainings, the one that I wanted to add was social media training.
Okay. Can you clarify, are you asking for a training on our guidelines or like how to use social media?
So there are consultants who do training for districts on how to use social media. And to the extent that they can train boards on how to use social media, I think that would be a good preview to us then reviewing our social media policy, which basically treats it like a taboo.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Any other comments at this time? I think we'll have to discuss at our next meeting as well. Okay, so just really quickly, student representative recruitment process. We have 2 student representatives. One is a senior and one is a junior, which means the senior will be leaving us in a few short months. And historically, we would recruit that new student member in the fall, and that process takes time. And then usually they were onboarded right at the beginning of the budget season, which is not like the nicest time to onboard a new board member. So I have put together, I did the recruitment for Gracie, right? Yeah. Yeah. And then board member says I did the recruitment process for Ally. Is there a board member who feels passionate about being part of the process? And before you sign up, I will tell you that I've put together some resources that include step-by-step what you need to do, and some like a copy of materials that we've used in the past, like an ad interview questions, the application questions, anyway, a rubric for scoring applicants. So hopefully you would have all of the materials and you would just meet with the student reps and tweak how you'd like it to look for this year, but you wouldn't be going in blind. You would have a step-by-step process. It doesn't have to be one board member, it could be up to 3. But historically, since I've been on the board, it's been one person. So does anyone feel? We could also talk about this next week, but I just wanted to kind of like get it out there that we need to start doing this spring.
Can I add a timeline? We were thinking that applications would be due April 27th, so then the board member would probably have to review applications the week of the 28th, and then hold interviews the week of the 5th.
Oh, that's great.
So
Would you
just
email
those
that
2
to me?
weeks. Yeah, totally.
I'd be happy to help. I'd like to, if it was, I don't know that we get social media training before that, but that would be something great because that would probably cast a wider net for potential applicants.
Yeah, and we
Knowing how you kids communicate.
We're pretty good about joining up.
Oh, that's great.
Are any other board members?
Potentially help, I just wanna think about the timeline, and then.
You don't have to take a firm commitment right now, but that's helpful. Okay. It can also be helpful if there's more than one of you. Scheduling interviews with students can sometimes be a scheduling nightmare, and so if there was more than one board member available, that would be helpful. Okay, excellent. How are we doing on time? 3 minutes. Okay. All right, so that brings us to public comment. Again, this is a discussion of how this board would like to conduct public comment. At this time, we'll take feedback from the board. Seamus.
So I think the 2 main problems with public comment are that many of our constituents view our meetings as confusing. And at the same time, if we're not careful about how we run the public comments, it might break open meeting law. If we talk about something that's not warned, and it can disrupt the business of the board. So I think that, I have 3 ideas. The first one, which everything else kind of hinges on, I don't have clarity on how to implement, but I think the other 2 might point towards what to do. So I think we have to have something like these public forums, and I know that there's been a little bit of skepticism around those because sometimes people didn't come. And so, I have a feeling that maybe they should be like, instead of a normal board meeting at the time, to kind of make it feel serious. I think we should also have a prominent section on our front page of our website that says how to talk at board meetings. And then I think, we should, on the agenda template, have, language that is meant to be read. That I think that this comes across as a little bit like we're trying to control what people say, which we are. But, just, with a little bit more explanation. So small changes to the website and to the agenda template. A bigger question about what is a public forum.
So could I ask that you draft what you think would look good on the website, as well as changes to the agenda, and send it to me and blind copy the board, so the board can see your suggestions, and then we can talk about this again. I agree with you about the public forums. I think that's going to take a little bit more conversation.
Could I also ask the other board members, if you have thoughts about what a public forum should be, if you've had experience with trying to run some and they don't work, or whatever, would you blind copy the board on your experience?
Yeah, or prepare to discuss that in a board meeting. I think that would probably be.
Okay.
I just wanted to add to what Shima said. I think it's a good idea, because I think managing the expectations of people who are going to speak here is a great way to help it be more comfortable and a better understanding of what to expect in that situation. So.
And to that end, the one thing that I would add, I totally agree also, and I think that it might be helpful because some people may show up. I've been to board meetings before, I think too, previously. and then called in before, but where you show up and you want to provide comment, but you're not exactly sure because it is so formal, that even if you have something that we print them out and we have it, and it's like, hey, if you're interested in providing a comment, here's some handout information that people can get when they're here, because they may not have done the research in advance. But that's just an easy thing. You're here, oh, it's an easy, again, digestible thing, you can pick it up in.
Along those lines, if we do update the statement, I know we read it out at the start of every meeting. I'm not sure if in Zoom you can actually post that for online participants, so they have to dismiss it when they join. I know there is a feature, I think some tools have that, it'd be something to look at. I also, I mean, I said this last week, I do glean a lot from public comment. I know it, however, can derail meetings sometimes. So I would encourage the chair as we go into public comment to, you know, look at the room, the topics, and ensure, you know, because I think we can look, if there's only 2 people, we can let comment go on for a little bit longer per person and such, but that would be important to enforce. The only other thought I would have is that as we look at the agenda and we're doing agenda planning, we make it very clear where we would like to have public comment and where we really don't. Because I think as a participant and sitting there or watching online, I may feel like I want to make a comment on something, but I don't know if I'm supposed to ask or not. So if it's in the agenda, hey, in this discussion area at the end, you know, public comment at this point, that would at least clue in the community as to when we can, when they can expect to participate.
Thank you. So we did that training, Michael Keeley. I did type out something, which I thought I sent all of you line copy to, and evidently not, because that was a suggestion, and I have it written out, so I can send that out again to see if it's something that is acceptable. And just leave it out first.
So we going to move public comment to the next meeting for further discussion? Great.
And then point of reference, don't you, if you have feedback, you can't be sort of like all working on the same doc, so email the feedback to Chelsea on the doc that Laura will send.
All right. So we are at 7:32. We usually, for some reason, are putting our recess right before agenda items that aren't going to take very long. I'd like to suggest that if we want to take a recess tonight, that we do it now. And if not, we're just going to move right through the meeting. What would you prefer? Just seems a little silly to get most of the heavy lifting done, then take a recess and come back for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, so. Does anyone like a break? Okay. With that, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
So, connected to the city charter, the city is charged with selecting our auditor. So one of our financial reports, well, many of our financial reports, through the monitoring that you all will do, is connected to this audit. So you'll notice that, if you look at the board's schedule, the monitoring report to, look at our audit is not going to happen in March. It's going to happen in April because our auditors, schedule and the fact that they're still looking, they're still in the process of completing, an audit right now. So the city charter specifies rather that the city will select an auditor and that we have conversation with the city. The city has recommended and we agreed, and they have thus extended the engagement with R.H.R. Smith, who has been preparing our audits for some time. It's a 2-year extension, and I am just notifying the board of this. It's for fiscal years 25 and fiscal year 26. The school tours are happening on April 1st. And I wanted to make sure that board members know that they could join for any one of those tours, one of them, 5 of them, or none of them. We just want to make sure that that we do not have a quorum for any one of those at a time. So I wanted to make sure those options were out there. So Orchard is 9 to 9:30, Marcotte 9:45 to 10:15, Chamberlain 10:30 to 11, our middle school 11:15 to 12, high school 12:15 to 12:45. Again, I want you in our schools, seeing teaching and learning and the life and why we're here. So really happy to open those up to you. I know many of you work during the day, and again, that's when the life is in the schools. So we can do more of these, but wanted to make this available to you now.
So you were just saying we cannot have quorum at
That's
any of
correct.
those events.
Right, so whenever you could be talking about board business, and we are going to be talking about only board business. It's gonna be teaching, learning, facilities, the full gamut at those tours.
So no more than 4 people, or more than.
No more than three.
More than 3.
That's correct.
Okay.
Student reps don't count toward quorum. And they're invited to any of these. In fact, I would love to have either of you, should your schedules allow, to be a part of that high school tour. I'm gonna give all these tours, but wouldn't it be, more interesting if you did? So the high school tour is 12:45, 12:15 to 12:45 on April 1st. Should you have the availability, let me know.
Good recruitment too for the incoming student representative.
Yeah. Donuts and discussion, will be May 1st in this room from 4 to 5 p.m. We have changed the date and the time of day. We've gotten a lot of feedback that, changing the time of day is helpful in broadening, the audience. So we really want to make sure that we, get as much engagement as possible. Again, student reps are welcome at that, don't count toward quorum, and board members are also welcome, no more than 3. So far, I've got Emily and Jennifer for that one.
May 1st, 4 to 5.
May 1st, 4 to 5 in this room here, the boardroom. Should I pop you on the list? Understood, yes, I am the same way. I also wanted to provide an update. I have been in touch with Anna Lalonde, who is the Charter Committee Chair, and the City Council has provided the direction to move forward with discussion about an evidence finding regarding a charter change, which I have advocated for and several board members have advocated for, which would be to do what some of our neighbors in Burlington and Lewiston did, which is to expand voting to be all resident voting. So for example, we've got a growing number of property owners in South Burlington who have children in our schools, and each year at budget season, they say, Violet, I really want to vote. We love our schools. We would love to have a voice, and because we are not residents, albeit property owners, we cannot vote. So I'm going to be taking a meeting with Anna and providing feedback from my end, and I would like to offer the opportunity for board members to provide feedback to me to give to Anna. You can email me directly if you'd like. And if you're interested in speaking with Anna, I can certainly pass along your contact information and have her connect with you.
Can you explain that? That didn't make full sense to
Yes,
me.
I apologize. I
That's
glossed over that. So so the South Burlington City has a charter committee, and the city charter has rules that impact the city and schools. And in fact, the schools are really heavily connected to the city through the charter. And one topic that we hear a lot about is voting. And so right now the charter as written, which supersedes state charter, which is really interesting as an aside, but the charter states that if one is a homeowner, that you could own a single family home here, your children could go to schools or not. And you do not have the ability to vote if you are not a resident. So if you're not considered a citizen. And so some of our communities, such as Winooski, Burlington, I think Montpelier's has made the change now. have opened up voting to be all resident voting. So it means that anyone who is a,
Citizen.
yes, may vote. So that is something that the charter committee has reached out to me, and I'll be meeting with the chair. So I wanted to make the board aware of that.
So-
Um, yes, no,
So the charter committee is considering changing the city charter to allow this.
they are gathering feedback, which they will present to the council for a decision. Is my understanding. Elizabeth, if you, I realize we're getting, we could actually tack this onto an agenda item. I'm just gonna be meeting with her before our next board meeting. So, we can certainly add this on to a future agenda item. But for now, I wanted to let you know, I have been approached by her. And then again, like, this isn't seeking a whole board feedback. It would be just connecting folks as individuals, but you would not be speaking as a board, you would be speaking as an individual. And again, because of the timing, had we had another board meeting sooner, and there will be, so we can pop it on, you could talk about a board stance.
So am I allowed to ask questions about the superintendent mention of the auditing?
Yeah.
Assume yes, awesome. So, I understand that you're putting in a new ERP or a new financial system, new software, is that right?
Implemented.
Implemented, and could you just go through like, what are the top 3 benefits of that? One thing I remember is like, if we want benchmarking against other districts in terms of cost, that's an important first step. So like, what are the big high level items that come out of that new financial system?
Where do I begin? All right, so we've moved from like a 1995 Toyota Camry, which
Great.
like, it is, I use that example because like all of the many people in my family have Toyota Camrys. What we've done is we've modernized our system so that we have greater accuracy in record keeping. And we have increased financial controls. We've synced it with our time and effort systems. So with our employment records and our HR records. So we've increased the accuracy of how we're paying people. And then the financial system that we had before was no longer going to be supported by the company either. So there were many functions in it that were in fact obsolete and were no longer supported. So the issue that we were trying to solve, anticipating the question you asked, what are we trying to fix here? Is I wanted finances to be extremely accurate. So this is a transition year, and that FY26 is the first budget built under Tyler, our ERP. And we spent a lot of time and care looking at, hundreds of thousands of lines, trying to make sure nothing fell through the cracks, but it'll improve accuracy of budgeting each year. And in fact, I had mentioned to you all, engaging with Tassant, who does work on budgets. They've worked with Burlington for a few years. And when I approached them the year before last, they wouldn't work with us because our financial records were not in good enough shape for them to be able to pull the data they needed to say, hey, we recommend that the cost of art per student in the K2 band is X number of dollars per student. So I want to get us to a place where we're using much better metrics than we have been. Our equity matrix that we implemented the last couple of years is our best guess based on our financial software. But this should really allow us to, now we can engage with Tassant and they can really dig down into detail to improve the equity of how we budget, which is the goal. Meet our students' needs and support our staff.
So with, one quick question on the top of the statement. So with Smith, how long have they been the owners?
Ooh, so the city, all right, so The city just, they just extended the contract by 2 years, and I think it was a 4-year. You think the same thing? Yeah. So, they're an extremely reputable firm. And, we were, pleased when the city said, hey, we're moving forward. And, so.
I'm not trying to disparage anybody, it's just, I think it's important that you use different auditors every once in a while, because, you know, history has shown, like you go back with Enron and Arthur Anderson, two of the best firms, companies in the nation. And they were cooking the books. So,
Yeah,
and
they were.
I'm not accusing anybody of doing it, it's just important to change things, because that's the way you find out if there is a problem.
Cool guys. Point well taken. Yep, so like I said, this is connected to the charter. The city extended it, so it'll be for 2 more years. We have had that discussion with Martha Machar at the city already. And my understanding is that the city has that same kind of budget. It's so funny you say cook in the books. I took accounting my freshman year of college. My professor, Rossimondo, who's a New Yorker, he'd say, you can talk about Enron, cook in the books. And it's like one of the big things that sticks with me. So I haven't heard that expression in a while. So
Showing my age.
no, I remember that. So yeah, great point.
I just wanted to ask a quick question, back to the school tours. If we wanted to go on a school tour, we should, email trustee you to let you know what time and which school, so you can make sure.
Copy Delana Gilroy on that as well for scheduling purposes. She's helpful. Thank you.
And then just one, to conclude my point, I just want to say again, for clarity, the Honors American Conversation will be happening tomorrow night, Thursday, March 20th. It'll be at 7 p.m. at SVHS, and it's in CAF 2, and all are welcome. And please reach out to John Craig, acting principal, directly if you have any questions. He is happy to meet with you, talk with you, and set a time to do so.
Will that be on?
It's in person only. I don't know if it's being recorded. Do you all heard anything about that? This is not an event that the district is scheduling. Typically, the district wouldn't make decisions on course offerings. That's something that goes through, the director of school counseling, and the school-based administration makes those decisions. So I don't want to give the false idea that this is something the district is hosting. I did ask acting principal Craig to host this session when we started hearing discussion at the board level, because when something hits my email, I know there's concern. So I said, hey, let's do a forum. And I said, let's have information provided, but really the important piece is the Q&A, so that folks can get their questions discussed.
Can I just clarify, you are encouraging members of the community to reach out to John Craig directly, and I'm encouraging the school board members to reach out to John Craig directly.
That's correct. For folks in the community, if they've got questions, school board members, you would email me with your chair.
I plan to be there.
Someone else?
Yeah, I think while you had sent out the document for us to fill in, and I noticed that there were 3 names. There was 1 space left, and I took it. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that we have 3 people committed already.
There are, so I have on my list, please correct me now if I'm wrong, I have Jen and Tim and Gracie and Allie. Is there anyone else who's interested in joining the Honors American Conversation? I wonder if Laura is.
Sorry, I thought there were 3 of us on there. I didn't, probably didn't pay attention.
Laura, are you attending the Honors American Conversation tomorrow at the high school at 7?
I am not.
Okay, so there's 2 board members currently in addition to our student reps. So if someone else would like to attend, that is an option for you. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going our recess because we're actually pretty close to being done now. Up next, we have agenda item 8, action items. The South Burlington School District calendar for the 2025-2026 school year. I would entertain the motion.
I move to approve the school year calendar as presented.
And votes, do I have a second? A second. Laura seconds, any discussion?
No questions, sorry.
I just have one question. It's just clarification, Violet.
Yes.
There are several entries in here like Rosh Hashanah,
Yes.
that aren't, they don't look like there's school closings or anything, just
That's
for
right.
clarification. I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
What's the catch?
So, to answer that, I want to provide a little bit of background. We're required to have 175 student days. We need 175 common days with those in our region, which ranges from Addison County, up to FNESU. And, we have, the obligation to have 175 common days for CTE, so Career Technical Education Centers. Some of you might know those as vocational tech centers. That's what they were used to be called. The vernacular's changed, so CTEs. With that, CVSA strived to make a common calendar last year. Our community gave a lot of feedback to me about how it really didn't work. So I went to CVSA with, I just said, hey, based on our collective bargaining agreement, I can't make those commitments. We're unique in that we are the only district who doesn't make up snow days. So we always have 180 student days in our calendar. The teachers' collective bargaining agreement states that teachers will work 189 days and 180 must be with students. And with that, there are 8 in-service days. So with those parameters, we were not able to move forward with the common calendar. So we got forgiveness there. However, we made a commitment as a team that we would not have after-school activities on certain days that are noted on the calendar. And that's why they're noted here. That will be in alignment with the VPA, the Vermont Principals Association, who does scheduling for sports. So that's an important connection there. After school activities that will take place are things like our Schools Out, which is our after school program. So that will still happen, but there won't be, soccer games, football games, things of that nature.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Laura, yeah.
I said yes, sorry.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, up next we have agenda item 9, agenda planning. Looking at the April 2nd meeting, we have finance committee listed under discussion items. Do we need that? So just some context for the board. In our last retreat, in our last confirmation of the board, we set out a finance committee and the intention was for it to dissolve after a budget pass. And then the board of any given time would have the option to stand up that committee again if we need it for another budget. So it's not meant to be a committee that is just standing in perpetuity. The intention was to give each individual board control over their committee work. So I'd like to remove this from the April 2nd unless anybody needs to discuss finance committee.
Just one question for procedure. Do we need to make a motion to disband the finance committee, or is it just something we can't do?
Question, I would have to check the committee charge that we drafted up, but I don't think so.
You don't, should there be contention to add it back at the onset of a meeting? So to change an agenda in the meeting would require a 2/3 majority. However, in agenda planning, there's no action.
I don't think he's asking about removing it from the agenda. He's asking, do we need a formal motion to dissolve the committee as it currently stands? And I'm saying I need to check the committee charge to see what we wrote out, but I'm pretty sure in that committee charge, it says the committee automatically dissolves after a budget pass.
So I'd say we leave it on and then just wrap it up at the next meeting to this, if you could let us know.
Sure.
So we'll just leave it on just so you can let us know what's happening. in case we have to make a motion to dissolve.
I have the charge in front of me. Do you want me to?
Yeah, that would be great.
Nope.
Okay. So, the committee operates at the direction of the board and shall conclude its activities each year following the successful adoption of a budget. Therefore, we do not need to have it on the agenda through.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all. Yeah.
Also looking at the April 2nd draft agenda, we already have school board retreat planning, the student representative recruitment process. We only need school board retreat on there one time. And then, what I've heard so far is we need to add public comment to discussion. We'll need to add a city school update. The previous board wanted the chair to use our Front Porch Forum posts to inform the community about our upcoming work. I heard tonight that also perhaps like the highlights would be helpful. We will be monitoring 2 monitoring reports at our April 2nd meeting. They are 2.4 financial condition and activities audit review, which that's not gonna be ready though.
We are hearing it could be ready. If it's not, then we won't monitor it.
The other is 2.2 treatment of community. And some of the feedback I've already heard from this board is making sure that not just the board, but the community understand how we're monitoring and what that looks like and what the importance is. So I'm wondering if you'd like for me to post something on Front Porch Forum. I'm asking now because I won't have an opportunity to ask you before our next meeting, and that is when we are reviewing these. So timely communication of the community would need to go out before that next meeting.
Do you have the tool to check the? Of course. Do you have the tool to check the reading level? Cause I have a professional subscription to it. I pay for it.
I will send it to you, and get your feedback.
Okay, I love that tool.
I'm just looking for general.
The first time I sent him something, he's like, that's grade level 14. I was like, okay. My job is to provide you with a technical answer though. So when I communicate with you, I'm gonna give you that
Oh,
technical
100%.
response.
I
Okay,
expect 17 no less.
I will, challenge accepted.
Okay, so just to be clear, I'm getting the green light from the board to post on Front
Yes.
Porch Forum about our monitoring reports specifically.
Can I ask, what other mechanisms are there to communicate? Because I'm not on page.
You should. The other paper I don't think is a good mechanism for,
It's delayed, it's too delayed.
it's too delayed. And I don't wanna just guarantee that we always have space in the other paper. Other than that, like, we can ask our superintendent to put things in her newsletter, which really covers the school community.
I would love to, if you wanna add that as an agenda item to talk about. What the media are,
That would be good
that's a
too.
big topic. I don't know if we're
Yeah.
ready for it, but.
The board does have, monthly space reserved in the other paper, and so we should, I don't know where you are at with the topic for that, but I imagine, we're due for an you all are due for an article.
I do, I've been adding to my board meeting wrap-up email that I send to you all after our board meetings, and I already have board members to consider tactically how public forums or something similar might improve board communications / public engagement. Perhaps a part of that could be the mechanisms by which we share information with our community. So just make a note of that.
So are you saying that the agenda item? Will we have an agenda item on public forum?
Yeah, for public comment.
And then we would, and then in the public comment section also, but wait, I thought you were just saying we would also talk about how we tell people about that. So that's, so the.
It's separate. I was just.
I see.
Yeah, you're right. And they should be listed separately on the agenda. So, what would we call that? Community engagement, strategies?
Cause you also have, like, I follow like the Instagram page. There's a South Burlington School District Instagram page.
Well, the district is different than the board. but
Right.
yeah, and again, social media training.
Yeah.
I think that just further context, the reason the school board has not been active on our own social media accounts is because that would require someone to stay on the board long enough to be consistent with that, so. And strategies. Okay, we also will need to add as discussion, sorry, I have a lot of thoughts about this. By contract, we're due to evaluate our superintendent by May 15th. And in order to do that, we have to start that process now. So I will add that to the agenda. We may need an executive session, but I don't think we'll need it by the 2nd, maybe the 16th. So I'll share information about that as well. That'll be on our next agenda. The previous board got feedback about making sure that the public is aware of when this evaluation is going on. And so again, I asked, do you want me to include that in my front porch forum as
Yes.
work that we're working on? Okay, anything else for our April 2nd meeting? It's filling up fast.
So will you send the line out?
Yep. Okay. Are we ready to move on? Okay, that brings us to agenda item 10, consent agenda. Are there any questions with any of the items on the consent agenda? Any order Jeopardy?
No, I just did read Eliza Prescott's, resume or whatever it was, and she has a German degree from the University of Vermont, which I'm sort of proud of because that's where my degree has come from. So I'd like to just welcome her to the team and say, she probably knows some of the same professors that I know.
That's so funny. I talked to her, so I onboard all of our new staff and I talked to her. And I didn't have that connection, so I don't know, but she is really excited and we're glad to have her coming in.
Okay, and no further questions or comments?
When you say consent agenda, do you mean all of those 3 bullets that are there, the
Yes.
ABC?
Yep.
Okay. I had a couple of questions. So regarding the AP reports, oh, I guess I'm out of order here. Approval of minutes, I have nothing to say for that from March 5th, but on the AP orders, I was just curious what the categories represented and how they're classified on the accounts payable summary. And are there general budgets for each of those categories? And if so, how is that determined?
Those are really excellent questions, and I do think we need to do like an AP order training at some point.
Well, let's make that an agenda item because I can't answer that pretty quickly, but we can answer that for the whole team. That is, I couldn't do that in 5 minutes.
Sorry. That's okay. That would be a good one to have for AP training. Okay, so that was one of the questions. And then the other one was, with Eliza, I was just curious with the salary, is that inclusive of benefits or is that separate? Is that like all the full package or?
Is that something we could talk about?
That's first,
Okay, and then we can handle that all separately. I was just curious.
that's salary only.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just had a quick, who does the minutes?
Julia McGuire, she's our communications coordinator.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, open meeting law requires like this much. It requires like basic things like, you know, who provided public comment and who made the motions and like what the, yeah, they're far more detailed than, I don't know if any of you read other board meeting minutes, but ours are more robust. So thank you, Julia. She's on right now.
So if I make a comment that Julie McGuire does a great job with our minutes, that ends up in the minutes.
She won't put it in there.
She won't.
And the consent agenda items are approved by consent, which brings us to agenda item 11, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
And moves, do I have a second?
Second.
Laura seconds, any discussion?
It's really early. I don't know, guys.
How can we drag this out? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Right, yeah.